Emily Clarke wasn't looking for love when she met Richard Hayes. At 25, she was just trying to navigate her post-college life in the bustling city of Chicago. She worked at a small nonprofit, pouring her heart into causes that paid her little in return, and spent her evenings curled up with books, dreaming of something more fulfilling. When her friend dragged her to a charity gala one chilly autumn night, Emily had no idea her life was about to change. Richard Hayes, a man of immense wealth and charm, was the keynote speaker at the event. At 65, his salt and pepper hair and tailored suit exuded sophistication. His speech about philanthropy and the importance of giving back captivated the room. But it wasn't until Emily found herself alone at the bar, awkwardly fidgeting with her glass of wine, that she first spoke to him. "Not a fan of crowds?" Richard asked, his voice warm and inviting. She looked up, startled. "Not really. I'm more of a behind-the-scenes kind of person." He smiled, a twinkle of amusement in his eyes. "Sometimes the quietest voices have the most to say." It was a line that stuck with Emily. Over the next few weeks, Richard became a larger presence in her life. He started sending flowers to her office, calling to ask how her day was, and inviting her to dinners at exclusive restaurants she never dreamed of affording. It was overwhelming, but intoxicating. Here was a man who seemed to see her, really see her, in a way no one else had. Her friends weren't as charmed. Claire, her childhood best friend, was particularly vocal about her concerns. "Emily, he's 40 years older than you. This isn't normal. What could you possibly have in common?" "It's not about age," Emily argued. "It's about connection. He's kind, supportive, and he believes in me. Why can't you just be happy for me?" Claire sighed, but didn't push further. She knew Emily well enough to recognize that once her mind was set, there was no changing it. Still, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that something about Richard wasn't right. As the months passed, Emily and Richard's relationship deepened. He lavished her with gifts, flew her to exotic destinations, and introduced her to his circle of wealthy friends. For Emily, it felt like a fairy tale. But beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to form. Richard's attention sometimes felt stifling, his charm occasionally laced with subtle condescension. When he started suggesting she quit her job to focus on their future, Emily hesitated but reluctantly agreed. What she didn't realize was that giving up her job wasn't just a career change. It was the first step in Richard's quiet erosion of her independence. What began as love and admiration was slowly becoming something else entirely. And Emily was about to discover that fairy tales often come with a price. Emily's life quickly transformed after leaving her job. Richard insisted it was for the best, promising to support her financially while she explored other passions. At first, it seemed ideal. Emily spent her days indulging in hobbies like painting and writing, things she'd never had time for before. But over time, she started to feel restless. "Maybe I should volunteer somewhere," she suggested one afternoon as they lounged in his penthouse. "I miss working." Richard looked up from his laptop, his expression a mix of disappointment and concern. "Why would you want to stress yourself out again? You have everything you need here. Isn't this enough?" His words stung, but Emily dismissed the feeling. Richard always had her best interests at heart, didn't he? She convinced herself that her discomfort was her own fault, not a sign of something deeper. Slowly, her world began to shrink. Richard's friends became her only social circle. His interests dictated their plans. Even her wardrobe started reflecting his preferences. Sleek dresses and high heels replaced her casual jeans and sweaters. Whenever she voiced concerns about her growing dependence on him, Richard would brush them aside with a charming smile. "That's what love is, Emily, relying on each other." Claire was less convinced. On the rare occasions Emily saw her, Claire would voice her concerns. "He's isolating you," Claire said bluntly during a lunch date. "Don't you see that? You've changed, Em. You used to be so independent." Emily bristled. "I'm happy, Claire. Why can't you just accept that? Not every relationship fits into a neat little box." But Claire's words lingered. Later that night, as Richard scrolled through her phone to help organize her contacts, Emily felt a twinge of unease. She told herself it was just his way of being helpful, but deep down, she knew it wasn't normal. The breaking point came during a dinner party at Richard's home. One of his colleagues complimented Emily on a recent painting she'd posted online. Before she could thank him, Richard interjected. "Oh, I'm the one who convinced her to take up painting." She had no direction before we met. The room erupted in polite laughter, but Emily's face burned with embarrassment. Later, when she confronted Richard about the comment, he dismissed her feelings as overreaction. "I was just joking, don't be so sensitive." A week later, Emily received a call from an unfamiliar number. The voice on the other end introduced herself as Sophie Hayes, Richard's estranged daughter. "I know this is out of the blue," Sophie began, "but I need to talk to you about my father. It's important." Curiosity and unease compelled Emily to meet Sophie at a nearby cafe. Sophie, a poised woman in her 40s, didn't mince words. "My father has a pattern, Emily. You're not the first young woman he's dated. He thrives on control, on molding people into what he wants them to be." Emily's stomach churned. "You don't know anything about us. Richard loves me." Sophie sighed. "I'm sure that's what it feels like. But trust me, it's only love when both people have equal power. Ask yourself, do you really feel like an equal in this relationship?" Sophie's words planted a seed of doubt. Over the next few weeks, Emily began to notice patterns she'd ignored before. Richard's subtle condescension, his need to control her schedule, the way he always dismissed her ideas. She started digging into his past, and what she found was deeply unsettling. Through old news articles and online records, she discovered that Richard had a history of dating significantly younger women. Many of them had cut ties with him completely, leaving behind whispers of manipulation and control. The most damning evidence came from Sophie, who provided Emily with financial documents showing how Richard had financially exploited past girlfriends. Emily felt her world collapsing. The man she had trusted, who had promised her the world, wasn't the person she thought he was. One evening, Emily confronted Richard. She laid out everything she'd discovered, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and heartbreak. "You used me," she said, tears streaming down her face. "You made me believe this was love, but it was never about me. It was about control." Richard's calm facade cracked for the first time. "You don't understand. Everything I did was for you, to protect you." "Protect me from what?" Emily shot back. "From living my own life? From making my own decisions? That's not love, Richard. That's manipulation." Richard tried to argue, to deflect, but Emily had made up her mind. She packed her things that night and left, ignoring his pleas to stay. In the weeks following her departure, Emily struggled to process the relationship. She felt ashamed for not seeing the signs earlier, but therapy and support from Claire helped her understand that manipulation often hides behind the guise of love. "I wanted so badly to believe it was real," she confided to Claire one evening. "But love isn't about losing yourself. It's about finding someone who helps you become more of who you are." Slowly, Emily began rebuilding her life. She reconnected with old friends, returned to work, and started pursuing her passions on her own terms. Each step was a victory, a reminder of her resilience. Meanwhile, Sophie published a tell-all article exposing her father's pattern of manipulation. The piece went viral, sparking widespread outrage and tarnishing Richard's reputation. Former girlfriends came forward with their own stories, painting a chilling picture of a man who thrived on control. Richard issued a public statement denying the accusations, but the damage was done. His once pristine image was shattered, and his influence waned. Months later, Emily received an unexpected letter from Richard. It was an apology of sorts, though it read more like an attempt to justify his actions. "I truly believed I was helping you," he wrote, "but perhaps I was only helping myself." Emily didn't respond. Instead, she wrote a letter to herself, a promise to never lose her sense of self again. She tucked it into a journal and closed the chapter on Richard Hayes for good. The experience left Emily with a newfound sense of purpose. She began speaking at events about recognizing red flags and reclaiming independence. Her story resonated with others, particularly young women navigating relationships with significant power imbalances. One evening, as she addressed a packed room, Emily shared the lesson that had taken her so long to learn. Love should never cost you your identity. Real love builds you up. It doesn't break you down. The audience erupted into applause, and Emily felt a wave of closure. She had turned her pain into something meaningful, ensuring that others wouldn't have to go through what she did. As Emily walked home that night, she felt lighter than she had in years. Her life wasn't perfect, but it was hers again. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough.